Family, business, fitness, health. Those are infinite games.
I literally would be obese if it wasn't for daily freaking discipline.
People tend to underestimate just how much human nature is wired to be lazy. I never actually worked longer than an hour and a half straight.
When it comes to fatherhood, did you somehow prepare?
I bought like a bunch of courses.
25 years from now, your daughter comes to you and she says, Dad, I want to build a business. What do you tell her? Mr. Mario Tomic, good to have you here. What has been the predominant thing on your mind 10 years ago, and what is the predominant thing that's on your mind today?
10 years ago, that's probably when we first ran into each other. I think that's about the same time. Yeah, I was pretty much all over the place, more like living in the moment at that time. So as you know, we're like traveling around, trying to gain as many experiences as possible, you could say like that. I mean, I was still thinking a lot about protein. I was still thinking a lot about getting jacked. That was always an obsession. But I think at that time, it was more, let's just live in the moment as much as possible. I wasn't really thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 steps into the future. So I wasn't like, this is the ripple effect of all these decisions. But now 10 years later, now I'm thinking more, okay, what's the second, third order of consequences of things that I'm doing today? Where is it going to put me? Because 10 years ago, it was a grind, just like work as hard as you possibly can, 12 hours, 14 hours. It doesn't even matter like what the hours is. It's just basically, are you grinding or not? There's no like time limit of anything. Now, 10 years later, though, you're kind of, okay, where do I need to grind and what do I actually need to do? Because obviously like you realize you can get good at a lot of different things. So the question is, what do you actually get good at? So where do you focus your grind on once you learn how to grind? And that's basically where it's at today. It's like, where's my time best used? Am I gonna, work 12 hours a day and miss my daughter growing up, that type of stuff. So it's like a little bit of a different mindset, but I love that mentality. Like you have to learn how to grind. Like, I think that's sort of essential.
Damn, I was kind of surprised. I was not surprised by your answer, what was on your mind back then, but I was kind of surprised about what's on your mind right now, because you and I know each other for almost 10 years and we haven't spoken in detail for quite a long time. And I kind of expected a Mario to be in this conversation that is more like a Mario that has arrived versus a Mario that still thinks so much about the future. And I'll tell you why that is, why I felt like that. Because 10 years ago, we were both grinding, we're building, we're just totally in the building phase. And now all I know about you is like, you got the crazy epic body. You're making so much money as a coach. You have multiple businesses. You're very, very well known within your niche. And you're a family father. You got your first daughter, I think, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, in my head, you're like, oh, you're accomplished. But here you're sitting and you're like, what am I going to do next? Planning. And this is really freaking interesting. Give me a little bit more of a deep dive there on your thought process there.
Yeah. So I'll go a bit high level and then we can go into some details just so maybe people can understand how I think about very important things in life. Because what you just listed there is we're talking family, business, basically finance, career, and we're talking fitness, health. So 3 big things in your life that you want to have. And the way I see those things is those are infinite games, meaning that game is not meant to be won. It's a game that you play. The goal of that game is to stay in the game. For example, in fitness, like you can't arrive at 10% body fat and just stay there magically. You still have to do all the things that got you there, a version of that at least, in order to keep that physique. And so you have to be in the game. You can't just get it. It's not like a degree. You get a degree, you have a degree. And people will put it on the wall and they always have a degree. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, whatever. But most of the important things in life, even if that doctor, let's say, stops working on his craft, eventually stops going to seminars, stops reading studies, he's going to degrade. He is going to lose the proficiency that he once had if he stops working on it. So the most important things in life aren't necessarily something where you can arrive. It's sort of this continuous energy that is going in that direction. With relationships. Like, can I say today, I'm a good dad? being a good dad is a process that if you can be a good, you can't just work at it super hard for a month and I'm a good dad. No, that's it. You know, it's like a never ending thing. Basically, you can be a good dad over a course of your entire life. There's a continuum there. So most important things in life, I would consider all as infinite games, meaning that there is no point of arrival. I mean, there are milestones. Obviously, you can get jacked, build, I don't know, 20 kilos of muscle. That's being pretty jacked. You can get lean. You can have, I don't know, $4 or $5 million in your bank account, make some investments, maybe have some dividends coming in, interest coming in every month. And you can do all kinds of stuff to have passive income. You can, but there's still that element of like, if you stop working on it entirely, you're going to be degrading, you're going to be losing. So things, I personally kind of had to wrestle with this a lot because I was thinking initially when I started, let's say that 10 years ago, like I will actually arrive. There is a point where, okay, I'm just going to chill. And I could probably get away with chilling. I would definitely be able to do that for quite some time and maybe even for the rest of my life if I lower my expectations. But the fact is that that took you so much work to get there, it's almost hard to shift that mindset now to not try to do anything. Like, because in the process of achieving these goals, you learn to love the process of achieving the goal. So you don't want to give up that same process, if that makes sense. But yeah, again, the general mindset, these are infinite games. Being a healthy individual is a part of my identity, meaning that it's like I'm taking showers, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to the gym, I'm eating healthy. It's not something that I necessarily do. It's someone who I am. So it doesn't change regardless of what's going on. You put me anywhere in the world, I'll figure out a way how to exercise and eat healthy. And the same thing is with work, same thing. It's just who you are. So it doesn't necessarily fall in that category of like, I gotta, hustle hard to get it. There's no hustle anymore. The discipline is to stay home and skip the gym. That's the discipline now. It used to be the opposite, obviously, right? For most people, it is.
That's crazy, man. And, I wanted to ask this question right away because I wanted to make sure that we get right into some valuable stuff other than the usual, how you been, man? And all that, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But you just totally blew my mind with this idea of like fitness, money, career. These are not games meant to be won. They're meant to be in them forever. That's such a cool one-liner too. So I'll steal that and slap it on Twitter over the next days. You'll see it.
Sure. There's a good book written on this, but it's a pain in the ass to read. It's really hard to digest. It's called Infinite Games. It's written back in, I think, in the 70s. There's a couple of people that have taken that same concept and sort of repurposed it over the years. Like Simon Sinek is one of the guys that talks about this. Yeah. There's a few guys that talk about this, but it's never been talked about in the context of fitness. And I think just to expand a tiny bit on this, the idea that knowing you're committed to something for the rest of your life, like knowing that, for example, you're never retiring, knowing that you're never going to be out of shape, knowing that you're never going to be, that you're never going to stop trying to be a good dad, a good partner, a good friend. There's something liberating about that, because once you know you're in the battle, like you're going to try to do your best to accomplish those things, versus when there's a question whether I'm going to do it or not. Because when you remove that question, the commitment is permanent, meaning that now the next thing is, okay, how do I figure this out? Which is a much better mindset, let's say in health and fitness. If you want to get lean and want to get healthy and lose weight or whatever your goal is, a much better mindset is, okay, I'm committed to doing this 100% and there's no exit. I burnt all the boats. So how do I actually figure this out? And I think that's a much better way of thinking about it versus, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me, like all that random, lack of commitment, which automatically means, or I'm going to do it for 6 months and then we'll see. It's, I think Tony Robbins uses the example, okay, I'm going to quit smoking for 6 months just to count the days until I get this first cigarette after, right? So people are kind of expecting. And if you're in that mentality, it's going to be very hard to achieve good things in life because they just take too long to achieve, right?
Plus, also, it takes you much more energy because every time you have to re-ask yourself that question, it's just freaking energy.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds really funny, but like, there's this famous Mark Zuckerberg thing is like, he only wears a gray shirt every day because he says he doesn't want to look at a closet full of different colored shirts and then have to make a decision because it takes energy. Every single decision makes energy. So if you just take that decision once, saying like, I'm going to commit to that, I'm not even going to question it, now you're good to go. It saves you a ton of energy. And that's also one of the things that it's funny that you brought that up because you're like, in our 20s and you and I are roughly the same age. It's all about just hustling, hustling, hustling. And then later on, it's about sure hustling, but it's also about efficiency. So I have optimized I think I had crazier hustle ethic just in terms of sheer volume and will when I was 20, but I get much more shit done now with quote unquote less time because I'm much more efficient. I don't mess around. I always have this concept like know thyself. I know exactly what positions I have to put myself in any given day in order to create the most output possible. And that is even things like when do I work? I figured out that I wake up and I'm ready to work. So there's no elongated morning routine whatsoever. In my 20s, I used to have that. In my 20s, I'd be like, wake up, shower, cold shower, eat, meditate, And then by the time I would get to work, I would already be kind of drained. Funny enough, I still do these things. I still meditate every day, but I don't do it in the morning because in the morning I want to build momentum, I want to get shit done. And when I dip during the day, I dip around 12. I wake up at around 6, start working right away, treadmill desk, get my first 5K steps in while working, doing the most difficult tasks right away. Then I have breakfast, steak, and so forth. And then I usually dip around 12. And that's why I meditate because I'm dipping anyways. I'm not going to be super productive.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
I'll meditate.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, dude. And I know, so you got this really awesome setup here. And I remember you were actually the one that back then got me in shape at the very first. I remember we worked together for
it's a great transformation. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were the one who's like 10,000 steps a day. And that was way before iPhone step counters and stuff. I had like a Fitbit thingy on it that had to count the steps. Do you, and this is kind of like a personal question. Do you have a treadmill desk at home where you just step in? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little under the desk thing that I bought on Amazon. I think it's like $400 and it works really well. And the thing about that is I almost never have to use it. And that's an example of what you just mentioned is putting yourself in a position where there's almost no excuse or there's almost no friction to actually getting it done. Because we got really good weather here in Lisbon in Portugal. It's very sunny almost all the time. And it's 18, 20 degrees Celsius right now outside and it's February, right? Nice. It's insane. So I can always get my steps outdoors if I want to. And I go to the gym and back. I don't have my house with the gym and whatnot. So the way it's set up, like in that edge case, when I need that, when it's really rainy, let's say 4 or 5 days in a row, and I don't have the time or I need to just catch up, I can just bust out the treadmill and just quickly get it done. Or when I want to read a book, right? I don't like reading in a static position. Like I find it to be, for my mind, I find it to be much more I'm much more focused when I'm reading if I'm walking. So if I'm listening to an audiobook or if I'm just gently just moving around the house and have a book in front of me and just walking, it tends to work so much better for some reason. It's just, again, knowing yourself. I absorb information much quicker. I get much better ideas. I'm stopping, making notes, trying not to get hit by a car, on the street, like just stop in the middle. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's write it down. And that type of stuff works for me. But I really love this idea of 10,000 steps. And there's nothing magical about 10,000 steps. I think they trace that back to some Japanese step counter that used to come out and they were just like this magic number. We can see from research, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does scale between 8 to 15,000. You get a bit more benefits than it's taper offs. But that idea of I'm going to hit that, what it feels like a big milestone, I just like that because yes, physiologically it might not make a difference, but we're talking about psychology and humans are all about psychology for the most part. So if you get that win, hitting that 10K, it just feels good. You just hit that. If you're at 9,500, you're going to walk around your kitchen table to get the last 500. And that little bit makes a difference. I think that's sort of the win you get, and you get to, in a way, conquer yourself. Like every bit is like, I want to do something that's against friction. You have this natural, we all have to be lazy and chill out, which we tend to rediscover as you get, like, you kind of always kind of creeps back on you. It's like almost this battle of, you have the good and the bad wolf, and the good wolf is being fed with all these amazing habits and it's there. But that bad wolf in the corner, you can starve it, but it's never going to die. It's always there. And it's always looking for that opportunity to grab some meat, to grab something. And if you give it a piece, it's going to start coming back. And that's how I've seen, and over this last decade, since we started a conversation like that, I've seen some of the most disciplined people that I know back in the day just completely degrade to become some of the most undisciplined people that I ever met. Damn. And it's gradual degradation, as I like to call it. It's not overnight. It's not like, you wake up tomorrow and let's say you have, I don't know, burger and fries for lunch. Your physique is going to look exactly the same, 3 hours later, 2 days later, 5 days. But that little bit tends to compound. You start having bad decisions afterwards, and then it becomes a daily thing. Then it's a couple extra glasses of drinks, and then over time more alcohol, and then it just so slowly degrades. And I look at that same person, they've just lost it because the quote unquote bad wolf has gotten well fed and it's gotten strong enough. So now it's like a 50-50, and eventually it becomes an 80-20 for the bad side, and then you're done. So people tend to underestimate just how much human nature is wired to be lazy and go, with the flow. People really underestimate that. You can never get to a point where it's completely eliminated. Like even a guy like, we all know David Goggins is a great example. Like even a guy like that, you listen to him, what he's actually saying, he's really having to conquer himself every single day because he has that part of himself. And if he can't beat it, running 150 kilometers straight and just killing himself with discipline, doing pull-ups, breaking world records, I don't think anybody can really eliminate it. I mean, you can build great habits, but it's always there. So the idea of like hustle and grind and work, I think at the end of the day, it's understanding that you almost have to keep reinventing that part. That you have to keep feeding that good wolf. Otherwise you will degrade. Like if you let loose for long enough, it will eventually get to a point where you're going to struggle. And that's the universal truth for everybody, right? I mean, that's at least from what I've seen.
It's really true that it's a battle you have to win anew every single time. And I notice myself, like I love food and I joke around this a lot. Like I would literally be obese. I literally would be obese if it wasn't for daily freaking discipline. And I have cheat days. Hell, I freaking love cheat days. But during the cheat day, I'm already excited about the next day. It's get back to clean eating and feeling good and stuff like that. So it's a constant battle. I love how you mentioned that, it's like it's a gradual decline. What I literally wrote down that I wanted to ask is like, when was the last time you had a prolonged period where you chilled, and for how long was it, if there was one?
When would that be? I think last time I was with my girlfriend when we traveled. I think it was last summer before she got really, really pregnant. And then she couldn't move around anymore as much. So then we were chilling. Now it's more like sprinkled across the week. So I just basically got really disciplined when to stop working. And then that's it. Like just put a clock. If the clock hits that, it's done. Like no matter what. And actually, I would say that this has helped me become much more efficient, having that deadline, knowing that it's coming up. That constraint made me a lot more creative. So having some creative constraints tends to work quite well for me. Because if there's no fire lit under your ass, like you can just drag on. So it's the Parkinson law. However much time you give it, that's how long it's going to take. Yeah. It's annoying. But with this, it was like last year, and I'm actually planning a bit more of a chill now for my birthday, which is on 15th February. So it's kind of close to when we're filming this. We're doing some little travel here, and then we're gonna fly over to Mexico to hang out a little bit there. And I think that type of stuff is important to have, but it depends on your personality. Like I personally don't need a lot of that. Like I'm more excited about side projects that I'm working on. Like I got back into coding, so I'm just building random stuff that it's interesting for me. I find that more relaxing than I find just chilling on the beach and drinking, some kind of virgin cocktail. Because there's nothing from, I mean, I like that as well, but I'm not really like mentally engaged. I think that's the right way to explain it. I get my relaxation from mental engagement and physical work. That's where I relax the most, after physical work or mental engagement.
I mean, that's the whole concept between active recovery and passive recovery, right? Most people think passive recovery is the way to actually recover. Like, sit in front of the TV eating chips. That's bullshit. Active recovery is you're doing something with intent that makes you feel creative, that makes you feel good. For me, a lot of it is building Legos, as weird as it sounds. I gotten super into Lego again. Nice. And it's really funny because I just like the building process. And then I have this huge Lego. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So I always give it away to my little cousins. And cool. My girlfriend the other day, so she texted me. She's like, yo, our neighbors already love us. And I'm like, why? And she's like, well, I gave them your Lego. I met the little boys in the elevator, and she was moving in. and she just had my Lego. She gave him the Lego, and they loved it. And it said active recovery. You know what I also really like as active recovery is playing Subnautica. Do you know this the PS5 game? Well, I played it.
No,
on
I haven't played it. No, I haven't played it. I think I saw it on one of the charts, but I haven't played it.
Yeah. It's it's just like typical Minecrafty game, open world.
Oh, okay.
You just gather resources and you get so into it. And it's again like you're active, you're doing something with intent as opposed to just this like coping kind of mechanism thingy.
Yeah, gaming is awesome, man. I love gaming. Gaming is like I get hooked so bad.
Me too.
I try to min-max absolutely everything. I have to figure out what the meta is, and I have to essentially dedicate my whole life to it to try to beat the absolute, everybody.
Exactly.
Last thing I played was Diablo 4 when it came out, and I got
dude.
really, really into it. And then I when it started having the seasons, I just said, okay, this is just not sustainable. Like I have to get out of here. It's just not going to work for me. I'm just occupying so much time throughout the day with this. And then another one, I got really hooked for a while on Vampire Survivors. I don't know if you played that. It is ridiculous. I got hooked on it when I had COVID. So I got COVID and I was sick for like 3 days, and I'm not going to work. I'm just going to try and I can't go to the gym, right? Like I can't do much. So I'm just going to stay at home. And funny enough, I have a Mac, right? So there's not much you can play on a Mac. But that game you can play on a Mac.
Empire Survival?
Vampire Survivors.
Vampire
right?
Survivor.
Yeah, so it's a typical roguelike, very bad graphics, but it's extremely engaging. So you're basically gaining all these like things like power-ups, garlic, and all this kind of stuff.
No.
You're leveling up, and eventually you beat the boss, you unlock stuff. Anyways, but that thing got me hooked. I was hooked probably for about 2 months on just this. So I have to be very careful on... The thing is, like, I have to be very careful what I get my mind hooked on. I think at some point you might relate to this because you have a similar personality type. And I actually found this personality type to not be as common as I thought it would be. Is if your brain is sort of a problem solving machine. And if you get it to, it's more about which problems do you get it to solve than it is whether it's solving or not, because it's always going to keep solving problems. So if you expose yourself to a bunch of crappy news articles and you get upset about what some government is doing somewhere, my brain is trying to solve that. So I can't just I would rather just eliminate that entirely from my life, not even try to expose myself to that. Otherwise, I'm just going to get hooked and trying to figure out what some guy is doing somewhere that I cannot fix, that's not under my control. So it's kind of being very careful, like what do you get hooked on, what's in your control. It's just a very deep sort of thing that gaming can teach you that quite a bit, because you get hooked on gaming like nothing. I mean, those games are incredible. Like there's some really, really good games. I've been eyeing a few for a while now, try to see if I can get it back into maybe playing a little bit, but you got to be very careful.
Just don't touch Subnautica unless you really want to get sucked in. I played it through. Now I'm in Subnautica 2. It's really freaking good.
Nice.
But one thing that I wanted to mention here on this podcast too is like we used to talk 10 years ago about like, you should have all three things: 6-pack, money, and great relationships, and like you mentioned, man, it's less and less guys that I used to know that have it. They all fall off on the sides, be it get in a toxic relationship that ruins everything, or they make too much money and then they just get fat and lazy, or they turn bitter because once you around the 30 mark, 28 to 35, you go through so much shit. You have so many people doing bad things to you, even though you're trying to do the right things, that you can turn bitter. And then you have to make a conscious effort to be like, no, like, let's keep pushing. Bad shit happens. Let's keep doing it. So I've seen guys that you and I both know that just fall off, and it's cool to see you being 6-pack, money, relationship. You're still on that path and you still crush it. And one thing that I noticed too, like, I was on Instagram earlier and it showed me like my own archive. It was from 2017 where we hung out in Austria, where you and I were in the gym in Austria where it was snowing so crazy. And we're both like flexing photos with like 6-packs and like great shape. And I'm like, I've had that 6-pack since then.
Same. Yeah.
It's like we're having it for like a decade now. And that's to be commended too. Because I know my dad used to have a 6-pack when he was young, and now he's fat AF. He's been fat for like 3 decades, Shout out to my dad.
How old is your dad?
60 now. He turned 60 last year.
I got my dad into lifting about a year and a half ago. He's jacked. Yeah,
Dude,
yeah, he's 64.
Damn. I
He's
got
doing
my
pull-ups
dad in
and
the
chin-ups.
I got my dad in the gym as well, but it's still, it's a long way for him.
Once they get hooked, I mean, my dad got hooked, and he really likes it now. He does 10,000 steps a day, and he does gym. We have adjustable dumbbells and adjustable bench. Out of all the things that, I mean, last couple of years, that's one of the things I'm really proud of, because he was definitely way out of shape. And what he noticed is he was rapidly losing muscle, because he saw that, where's my legs? And he would be asking himself, all these clothes are loose on him. The only thing growing was the belly. And now he's in really good shape. So he went from 90 to, I think 92 kg down to about 73, 74.
Wow.
So he lost a lot of body fat. He didn't track his calories or do any of the fancy stuff we're doing. He just basically cleaned up the diet, stopped drinking as much. I mean, that was really a big thing, because you knock down a couple of beers, that's, I don't know, 600-700 calories. That's easy. And he got himself into lifting, which he was resisting for probably like a couple of years, 3-4 years before I mentioned, as I was mentioning it continuously, because I'm like a bulldog. Like when I grab, I always keep repeating it. Every single conversation we had, and I would call him probably like 5-6 times a week. Every single conversation, I was like, okay, are you lifting? Are you lifting? Are you lifting? Are you lifting? Eventually, eventually it worked, and it's just that never ending repetition, because I didn't give up. So he was like, I may as well do it. And now we're always talking about, okay, did you do a workout? Did you add more weight? Like, are you progressively overloading? That's the conversation now. So I'm really happy with that. I'm trying to do the same with my mom. She's walking more. That's something I'm trying to do as a first step, because in Croatia, women are not that known for lifting. So it's a huge problem with just the societal expectations. So for her to get into lifting, it'd be much more of a barrier compared to my dad. And he didn't want to go into lifting in a commercial gym or anywhere where people can see him. So we actually just bought equipment at home and figured that out. So that was the thing that made it work, because we bought a bunch of equipment during COVID and it was just sitting there. And he was like, well, the equipment is here, the bench is here, the dumbbells are here, the pull-up bar is here. May as well use it, because he didn't want to do it when we were there, me personally, or at the gym where other people can see him, because of just being a big eater. It's a bit more of a self-consciousness. But now I think he'd probably be confident in going into a gym as well.
That is so sick. For my dad, it was kind of like the way I did it with him. I started last year, and I was like, look, I'll pay you 1 month at the gym. I'll pay you a monthly pass. You have to go at least 2 times a week. You have to prove it by sending me a selfie. And if you don't, if you don't clock in 2 times a week, you're going to have to pay the monthly gym pass. And my dad, being like a very, very much like a penny pincher, he's like, and like Saturday, Sunday, he would still get the last 2 days of gym in, just so he wouldn't have to pay. So for me, that's the first step. Is like, at least he is at the gym. He's doing some compound lifts. He's getting into it. Because I'm like, look, my dad he's not gonna go on a diet. This guy, he loves food just like me. It's in our genes. Yeah. But I'm like, at very least, I can have him build some muscle mass, some bone density. It's gonna be good for his heart and all that jazz, So if he wants to go home and eat ice cream, I'll have him do it. At least it turns into gains. And he's also told me, he's like, yo, like my chest is tighter around the t-shirts are tight around the chest, because he's building freaking gains. So, shout out to our dads in this regard.
Yeah, big shout out to my dad. And I hope you can get your dad to eat more protein. That was like one of the big things that I tried to internalize with my dad, because they don't eat enough protein. Like, especially as you get older, our protein demands go up, and people tend to not get enough protein because you're just less responsive to the protein you eat. So if you, I don't know, whatever his body weight is, if he's, 80 kg, getting 160 grams of protein a day would probably be a good idea. If he's 90, getting about, again, 170, 180, just trying to really get him on a high protein diet, because that automatically will make him eat less of the other, garbage, because it fills you up, and you're getting the benefits, not just for the muscle tissue, but also all the other tissue, right? Because it's a building block for everything. I think that's like one of the things that if most people just did, they could avoid some of the muscle loss that naturally occurs with aging. And it's a big problem, man. Like once parents get into 60s, like you mentioned 10 years ago, I would never, like, I didn't even think about my parents. Like someone like, where are your parents? Oh, whatever, man. Like, they're just doing their thing. 10 years later though, now I'm like 37 in a few days here. I'm thinking about my parents a lot. Because I'm thinking clock is ticking. Like I want to spend as much time as I can with them. I want to be engaged. I want to have them involved. I'm really thinking a lot about what they're doing, what their life experience is like. Like one of the biggest reasons for me to try to be financially successful was for them not to worry about finances, which I'm grateful that we're in a position now. They don't have to work at all. They're taken care of, which, I mean, it's not flashy. It's not me driving a Bugatti or something, but it's something that I really care about. So I think the reasons, for me even to be in Europe first, I'm trying to be as close as I can to make it easily accessible for both us. I think it's important. And that's different values. I know some people, don't really have any relationship with their parents, and that's fine. I mean, if you ended up in that situation, but for me, it's one of my core values for sure. Like it's up there. It is definitely up. If I have to choose between, making, $2,000 tomorrow on some seminar, 5 or 10 grand, or go and hang out with my dad somewhere, I'll just go hang out with my dad. Like that's sort of like, you want to be in that. I mean, my opinion is like, I wanted to be in that position. That might not be your thing, but it definitely is my thing. So yeah, it's just a difference in core values, I think, at this point. And I'm meeting a lot more people that think like that. They didn't think like this in their 20s. Yep. I mean, now in their 30s, you start thinking.
It's weird. Like the older you get, the more you're, memento mori. You're thinking about your own death and about life just not being forever. And you see it in your parents. I see my mom every time I see her, I'm like, you look older. Like you notice it now, like you said, like you don't notice it for decades, and then all of a sudden it gets older and older and older and older and older. And it's the same for me to just know that it can become very lonely the older you become, because your friends are not there, they have their own families and so on and so forth. So I want to be the guy that is there with my parents. I still go on a yearly trip with my dad where we're like, wherever you want to go, Dad, just point at the map. We're gonna go there. We'll rent a car. And that's how we've been to Lisbon last time. We rented a Porsche and we just drove around and we did really cool stuff together, because, I'm like, it's just like, it's almost like you have a kid, but it's your parents, you are their kid, and you want to give them the epic life as well, as a form of giving back. I know both my parents, they've dealt with a lot of shit for me. I was very good at school, but I was very, very, I was an asshole to the teachers. So there was always trouble there. My parents always got my back. They always had to come to the headmaster like every month, because they're like, yeah, we're going to kick your son out of school. He's like disrespectful. He keeps talking back. He has really good grades. If he only could shut his mouth. And my parents always had my back. They could have said like, how dare you, Max? What the hell? Yeah. They would defend me. And I, now thinking back, I'm like, that's really nice. So I kind of want to be there for them too. One thing that I wanted to ask you, so we've talked about your parents, but you've become a parent yourself. I think 2 years old, your daughter now, or 1.5?
No, she's 6 months. So we just had her last year, and it's been man. That's another thing that I didn't really think too much about. I mean, I always knew that I wanted to be a parent. You kind of have it in the back of your mind. Yeah, I want to be a parent one day, and that's sort of the thing, like one day. And we don't really think about biology or timelines or what actually is the most quote unquote optimal time to have kids. It would have probably been 10 years ago for me, like when I was 27, not 37. That if you're actually thinking about from a biological perspective, the level of complication you can expose yourself. We luckily didn't have any of that. But let's say if I wanted to have a family of, 5, 6 kids, it would have been very difficult now, right? And that's something you don't really think too much about. Really, nobody talks about it. But the other thing is just, it's one day, so you don't really consider, okay, when is that one day going to come? Yeah. And realistically, there would be no downside for me if I if I and Patricia decided to have our first child like 4 years ago. It would have been, there's no benefit to actually delaying it for these last 4 years. There was really there was COVID. You could say like there's that crap and all the things that come with that, but it doesn't actually, it would have just enhanced our life earlier if we had it. I know some people talk about kids like it's just some, death sentence. It's just, oh my God, all these kids. It's just a lack of systems in organization, man. Like if you have good systems, you got good support, if you can organize yourself well, and if you sort of know what role each person has, I think you can make it work quite well. I think it added a lot of depth to my life and made me think about things that I didn't really think about before. I grew up, me and my brother, I was the older and we're just only 3 years apart. So we don't. I never saw a baby grow up, and none of my cousins, like, and just generally we didn't have that environment where I actually saw the process of another human coming out as a like little tiny piece of nothing. It's like 2 kilos, and suddenly it's like 6, and suddenly it's 8, and suddenly it's like full grown human. Suddenly it learns how to use its arms and talk. And it's just very fascinating because at some point, like even the most asshole person you know was a cute baby at some point. Like they were this completely innocent blank slate that you could have turned into anything. There's endless possibilities. And another thing that's kind of interesting, and I don't know how you'd feel about this in your situation, if you end up in my situation, like if you're a girl dad, because I honestly don't know, like, you know, I never had a sister. I mean, I don't have that much of a relationship on that level with any close siblings. So it's kind of an interesting experience to just, to learn how to bring a woman to this world. Like that's an interesting one, because for me, that's completely new. It's a totally different sort of experience. And it's kind of another thing that's, it's scary and exciting at the same time. Because I was always like, oh, guy things, you know, I just want to go and build houses, you know, shoot like arrows and stuff. So it's a little bit different, but anyway, it's like it's depth. I think that's the best way to describe it. It adds depth to life. You can get width very easily by buying a bunch of stuff that probably doesn't matter at some point, but getting depth in life is very hard. That could be that one conversation someone is delaying for, 5 years. They don't want to have the conversation. That one conversation could literally change your life. I bet there's probably about a decent percentage of people listening to this podcast that they're literally just one conversation away from having their life improved by 20%, increasing happiness, like 30%, or even like 50 or 100%, just like one conversation away, because they've been delaying it. There's some resentment being built up there. And that's the thing I want to try to really be very conscious of as me as growing up, is understanding that it's not that, I don't want to be in a position like that. We just want to always try to maintain that steady relationship with transparency as much as possible, because by the time, when someone's a teenager, I didn't listen to anybody. So let's try to make the most out of it, because I understand if she gets any of my personality, it's going to be a problem. Like I was burning houses down when I was 5 years old. So we got to try to figure it out early on.
It's funny you mentioned that because, my girlfriend and I, we've been together for 7 years, soon 8. And, we're moving together and all that. And which is something that, as an ex-dating coach, that I feel like it took me a little bit more of a discussion with myself than kind of like the average person. Because I came from these like crazy freedom, pure for like never sacrifice the freedom, and kind of settling down to a degree kind of makes you scared for freedom. But we've been together for 7 years now, and we're talking about kids, and we want to get to this very soon as well. And it's very cool because a lot of my friends, they are ahead of me on that, right? You have gotten a daughter. My other good friend, Matteo Diem, also ex-dating coach, German speaking Mario. He also has a daughter now. She's starting to play tennis. She's like 2
really
years
cool.
old or something, like little toy tennis and stuff like that. And I've also thought, like, my whole life I was like, hey, I want to have a son because I want to teach him all the cool boy stuff, like go to the gym, nutrition, and I can teach him social dynamics and build a business. But somehow I'm like, but then I look at my girlfriend and how cute she is when I'm cooking with her. I'm like, I kind of want to have a little her. Like a little daughter would be so much cuter too, but then also I would have no idea how to deal with a daughter when she's in her teenage years and it becomes difficult and she got her first boyfriend, stuff like that.
Man.
But yeah, I'm very hyped. I think I'll be a cool dad, and I know you are one. I mean, just hearing you talk is freaking awesome, man. You're funny enough.
I want to be jacked when those boyfriends come. Like if that boyfriend comes, like, okay, can you squat? If you can't squat 3 plates, like, what are you doing here? Just go back to the gym.
Get out of here.
I mean, the standard, at least 2 plates bench, 3 plates squat, 4 plates deadlift. I mean, that's at least, that's what you can give me. I mean, I'm not asking for much. Like anybody can do that.
But what's crazy, man? Like you haven't aged a bit. Like you look literally like the last photos we took in 2017 by Primoz, you look the same.
I'd say the same for you, man. Like that's like healthy lifestyle.
It's good to know. Like no wrinkles, no nothing. And people keep telling me, they're like, how old are you? And I'm like, how old do you think? They're all like 26, 27. It's the same for you. What's so healthy lifestyle? And when somebody asks you, what's your secret? What do you usually tell them?
Oh, I get enough sleep and I eat healthy. That's basically an exercise. I mean, it's very simple. Like, people don't believe that how far you can get just if you nail down fundamental principles and you're really good at avoiding big mistakes. Like, those two things will get you very far in life. Just don't make any huge mistakes and be really good at mastering fundamental principles. That will basically get you to the top 5% of your age group in almost anything. Like, it's very, very straightforward. Like, if you just go to the gym, lift weights, progressive overload, stay healthy, don't get injured, like all the basic stuff, do a good program, 3-4 times a week. Make sure you get enough protein, eat your salad and veggies. Don't do anything stupid with the diet. Don't try to go any extremes. Don't do carnivore and then switch to vegan and go back to carnivore every week. Like, just don't do anything dumb, right? Just basically stick to, if you're vegan, stick to that thing, make it optimal, make sure it's optimal. I'm not going to, bash on someone's ethical choices. But I mean, jumping from one diet to the next one and trying to pursue any extreme ends up being more so detrimental. And people also not getting enough sleep. I mean, I talk to so many, I'd say about 90% of my clients don't get enough sleep. And we work literally with hundreds of people. We're talking, I personally have worked with more than 1,000 people at this point. It's been a decade. I mean, it just accumulates over time. 90% are not getting enough sleep. Like 90%, meaning like 9 out of 10 really struggle with sleep. Either if they get it, it's interrupted, it's not high quality. There's a lot of problems that come with that. And, it's just the basic stuff. And I think the mentality of a bit of a stoic mentality goes very far. Just knowing what's in your control, what's not in your control, what is worth actually stressing about, in a sense, like, because stress is energy, right? If you can leverage stress to be productive and give you energy, you can accumulate quite a lot of energy to fix stuff. But if you're a lot of problems start when you try to worry and stress about things that are outside of your control. So I think that's really one of those things that I've been really good at. A part of this coming from my dad, since we mentioned him, because and my grandfather as well, he was very stoic for his beliefs. Like, he didn't read the books. I mean, he didn't read Meditations and Seneca and all the stuff that I'm reading. But the way they were making decisions was very rational, very pragmatic. They were very logical and analytical, same as I am with their approach to life. And I think that helps a lot, just kind of understand like what is really worth worrying about. And I feel like a lot more people around me tend to worry a lot, whereas I don't really worry too much. Like, it's just there's just not much that really bothers me that I really worry about. The only things that I could say really worry me is choices of others that I cannot directly influence, like choices of my parents that maybe are unhealthy, that I'm really worried, that's sort of what upsets me. But I'm also like always reminding myself, it's not under my control. I can try to do my best and that's it. Do what you can and move on. And sort of that, I think that helps a lot. So it's just the basics: sleep, stress, health, eating, and exercise. I mean, bottom line, just avoid getting sunburned. That's easy.
It was funny because I remember when you were my fitness coach, and again, like, you were the guy who got me in great shape, especially when I was on freaking world tours. I was like changing my city every Monday, and you helped me get through that, and actually not only survive that, but actually thrive and get great shape. And then I remember I moved back then, 2017, to Helsinki for like 3/4 of a year. And I remember I told you, I'm like, Mario, make me a plan for 7 days a week gym. And you're like, I don't recommend it, but I'll do 6. And then I worked out 6 days a week, man. I remember that.
You got jacked. I mean, yeah.
I had such low body fat, and I was just like deadlift, squats. And then on top of that, I had the crazy, the RSD sleep schedule, which was, I would pre-workout at midnight. I would hit the gym at 2 a.m., come back around 4, have dinner, I guess, at 7 in the morning, and then go to bed and sleep until like 4 p.m.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, if someone told me, hey, you got to do this now, and this is like X things you're going to get, I don't know, finances or whatever, I'd be like, no, thanks, bro. Like, it's just not worth it. I mean, but you can do all kinds of stuff when you're in your 20s. I remember as well, we were going out all the time, partying. Yeah. Especially in Barcelona, where the clubs close at 7 in the morning. You're up until like 8 by the time you get home. Literally, you go out at midnight. Like, it's empty at midnight. You leave at midnight. So the next day, if you want to get your 8 hours, you're literally waking up at 4 p.m. You're waking up at 4 p.m. I remember this moment where we would be going out on a Saturday, and the gym is closing at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. And I'm trying to get to the gym before the gym closes because I got to get my 8 hours of sleep. And we're going out on the Saturday because then everybody goes out. And what about as 25 years old, 26 years old? And you can kind of get away, but the guy is kicking me out of the gym, and I literally just arrived there. I look like I just slept the whole day, which I did. It is just ridiculous. Like, try to explain that to someone, and they're just, oh, wow, this is just wild.
It's wild, man. And I keep forgetting how the average person doesn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it's like, it's leg day. I'm going to do the leg day. There's no, oh, I'm tired, I didn't sleep well, I don't care. It's freaking late, you know? So the average person can resonate with that. But it's funny that you mentioned Barcelona because you've had several kind of base cities over the course of your life. I remember Japan was one, and I thought a lot about you last year. I lived in Tokyo for a month, and I talked to Vitkin a lot about, you know, where you guys were at. And then Barcelona, and then I think Mexico, and now Portugal. What was your thought process behind moving to Lisbon?
Well, Barcelona is a great city. And if I had to pick a place in Europe that, let's say, wasn't Lisbon, it would be probably Barcelona. Because if you look at what it has and what it doesn't have, I think it's a really well-balanced place with amazing weather all year round. Because there's actually only a few places in Europe that can match United States when it comes to number of sunny hours, and that's Spain and Portugal. Everything else is much further north. People don't actually, if you want to blow your mind with something, like take a look, compare the actual amount of sunny hours and the line that it crosses between. So for example, Lisbon and Portugal and Spain are similar to Florida in that sense. California is way further down south, so it gets way more sun than we get here. I think, what do they say? Like Vienna is at a level of above Toronto, like in terms of like winter and just where it's at in terms of sun and whatnot. So, and Toronto is pretty cold. Like Toronto is like crazy cold for North American standards. So I was kind of thinking, okay, where do I want to live? And I want to stay in Europe. I want to be closer to family. My girlfriend is also based in Barcelona. She's originally from Mexico, studied there, stayed there, and has all her stuff there. And it made sense for us to keep coming back there as well. Love the city. I think, I mean, Spanish vibes or like that lifestyle is all right for me. But the city has also degraded quite a bit since COVID, given that it's just this massive influx of tourists. The infrastructure itself hasn't really improved much. There's a lot more homeless people in the street. There's just a lot of stuff. So if we wanted to stay there, we'd have to basically live outside of the city in a suburb and just find our own little place. At the same time, I got a bunch of buddies who moved over to Lisbon, and especially the crypto guys, because there's no crypto tax here. I think that's sort of the idea. And there's a whole bunch of people, entrepreneurs that have moved here. And I'm kind of comparing the two cities. And actually, before we moved here, I talked to a couple of consultants and people that do sort of international living, the flag theory, putting your flags in different places like Dubai, Lisbon, I don't know, San Diego or whatever, Miami. There are just people that do these flag things. And I spoke to a couple of them, and they were basically sharing that, okay, Barcelona is a little bit stagnating, going down in terms of the city itself due to politics and all kinds of stuff. Lisbon is on the up. Like it's on the up and up and up and up. And I've been here before in 2015. I liked the city. It wasn't that well developed. Now coming back last year, it's amazing. I mean, this place is ridiculous. I mean, it has all the things that Barcelona has with minimal downsides. It's also a smaller city. More people speak English. It's much more easier accessible. Got a bunch of friends here who moved here. So it just all made sense also from a personal perspective, like company structuring, all that stuff. Like it's very easy in Europe to move around. So for me, just like, okay, this is a no-brainer decision. A really nice airport, direct flights to my girlfriend's Cancun place, and also very easy flights to Croatia. So we're in the middle. It's 1 hour less compared to the Eastern time zone in the US. So it's easier life. Everything, like if you kind of combine it for now, this is the place. But I mean, obviously you never know, but you know, at least for a few years is good, right?
You mentioned that I was in Lisbon too. Was that Lisbon where we went for the Blink-182 concert? And I noticed the same. I'm like, damn, this is like, I expected it to be like Spain. Not many people speak English, and it's like kind of old school. No, it's hyper modern, like super good. I was like, damn, Lisbon is really freaking amazing. And Yeah, very, very much surprised there. And you mentioned COVID a couple times, and I wanted to ask you that either way. It's like, what did you do during COVID? Where were
I
you?
was
What did you
locked
do?
in Barcelona. Like we flew from Cancun and we landed in Barcelona 3 days before the entire country locked down. So
Oh,
we literally were in Cancun, partying, having fun. I was there with Bastian. You know Bastian, right?
shout out. Yeah.
And yeah, so we're shout out to my man Bastian. So we're having fun in Cancun, living the life. I flew back to Barcelona, just massive lockdown for 6 months, 7 months. We were basically unable to leave the apartment unless you go to the grocery store and the pharmacy. And that was sort of the time when you know gym access was scarce and we were training with resistance bands, building your own little home gym and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was, I think we all, I mean, depending on where you're at, eventually I bailed. We just left Spain. We actually went to Bulgaria because Bulgaria didn't care about the rules. So they just like, okay, YOLO. And we were like, okay, let's YOLO with them. And we just went there because I think early on, like I wasn't really that scared when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to my own personal health, because I'm like I'm getting ready for this 35 years. I don't care. Like if something happens to me, the whole world is gonna implode, right? Because I've been building for this. Like my body is in tip top shape as much as I can. We actually we're traveling. We went to Bulgaria. That was a good place to be at the time. Gyms were open, so we had a good normal life. From there on, I think we went to Croatia, which also kind of opened up for a while in the summer in 2021. So I had a really good time there. So yeah, COVID was kind of interesting. We saw a massive influx of more people for fitness. Like we just saw like our client numbers just went through the roof. Many of my guys that I'm even still working to this day came from that era because they were all kind of personal training, like all this kind of in-person stuff, and just everything went online. So we did see like our numbers went up by a lot. And I did take a bit of a break as well from making content at the beginning. Then I went back to it. Yeah, it was an interesting time, honestly. Like and there's a lot of stupidity as well from it that I learned to I lost a bit of hope in humanity in some things. Like, you know, when I was deadlifting 200 kilos for reps and I had to put down my mask to breathe between the reps. The guy comes over and is like, oh, you can't do that. And I was like, dude, I'm going to die here. I'm passing out. Like that type of stuff was like, okay, I'm like, there's nobody in the gym, you know, like, let me just, you know, that type of stuff. Or, you know, I'm squatting 10 reps and I'm just suffocating. Like, there's stuff like this that I was, okay, come on, like, can we give me a break, right? But I understand, obviously, there's a lot of fear and but it just, common sense was kind of hard to come by back in those days. Kind of hard to even explain to people, kind of looking back at it.
It's crazy looking back now. Like, hey, everybody remember how everyone lost their minds and how everybody thought the whole world is going to die? And then, and the funny thing is now COVID is still around. It's not like less deadly now, but just it's not in anymore. I mean, so people don't care. I was lucky enough to haven't been affected by it. I was in Kiev back then, you know, Eastern Europe. They're like, oh, no problem. You know, nobody really gave
they don't care.
Yeah, it was like officially in lockdown, but unofficially all the restaurants were open. They were completely full. People were partying. And then we randomly went to Iceland because my girlfriend was like, I did research. Iceland is completely normal. So we just flew to Iceland and went on a completely epic Iceland trip. We had we rented an SUV and we just drove around the island.
Oh my God, Iceland is amazing, man.
So
I love that place.
There, you know, nothing. We were whale watching and jacuzzis and have you been to that one place? The what is it called? The spa with the milky water where the water is like white?
I haven't been there. No, I know which one I missed out. I went to all the geysers and I went to the big waterfall, and then we also stayed in Reykjavik a lot too. I mean, I was at a lot of the restaurants that are locally there.
Didn't you stay there for a long time? Even
I think we did like 7-8 days or something, but we packed so much in I wish I could have stayed longer. It's an interesting place. It's almost like you're on a different planet when you go up there. It's just I would recommend everybody. Iceland and Japan are the two places that I would definitely recommend everybody to try out at least once if they can. Like, it's just a weird sort of disconnect. Like, it's amazing up there.
So true. Like, it literally feels like a different planet. Iceland, I found, was very similar to Hawaii, just colder, because it's just this random island in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And absolutely crazy. Did you actually ever go back to Japan? How long did you live there back then?
I have not gone back. I was there. The maximum that my visa allowed me was 3 months. Like, I literally went outside the last day that I could. Got a super fun time in Osaka. We were going from Osaka to Kyoto and all the Nara and some of the nearby areas. I had a blast there. That Kansai region is really nice. That's where a lot of the mangas come from and all the stuff that I really like to read, and I like to sort of watch animes and whatnot. So I had a fun time. Tokyo is another one that I would like to visit, and my girlfriend also wants to actually check it out at some point. So I think it would be a nice trip for us. It's very family friendly and it's nice overall. It's just a really cool place. It's a little bit far to travel to, and time zone is a little bit less compatible to like doing a lot of work with the US, but it can make it work. It's far enough, so it's opposite, so it kind of works out if you just wake up early and get stuff done or work at night. But yeah, it would be a cool thing to come back there. Just the food is incredible. Like the lifestyle is incredible. Yeah, I love Japanese food. I mean, for even now, most of the times we go out, it's just going to be a Japanese restaurant. So nice. Yeah, I love that, man. I would want to definitely go there. I think it's it's an amazing place. Yeah, highly recommend.
The beef, man. Every day I eat beef. So good. I remember. So what I did, because I have a lot of US clients too, is like I just switched my sleep schedule to go to sleep at 2:30. So I would have most of my calls between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. and then just go to sleep. And it was done. And it was cool because like my closers, they work Europe time. So I would wake up and I would see the money that they made while I was sleeping. Whereas if I'm in Europe, it's kind of like when I'm sleeping, not many closers are working because they're either in Asia time. I think we have one or two in US time and the rest is Europe. So yeah, Osaka, I haven't been there. We haven't been there, right? But we were at Kyoto and Tokyo.
You've been to Kyoto. Kyoto is the place.
Oh, okay.
No, you haven't been to Kyoto? Kyoto is amazing.
Yeah, we went to that bamboo forest thing. It's called bamboo forest. We saw some temples. We were only there for 3 days. Okay. Dude, we stayed in this 250-year-old Airbnb in this house. And
that's incredible.
With the doors that you could just punch through if you wanted, There was no Western beds. It was all just mattresses on the floor. And we had this there was like how it's like usual for Japanese houses to have a tiny Zen garden in the middle of it. So the house went around the Zen garden. There was one bonsai tree that grew up 2 stories high. Nice. And we spent 2 nights there. Primoz and I had to share a room and we were just sleeping on the mattresses, and it was just pouring rain. It was like summer rain. And we opened the balcony door. Outside was the tip of the bonsai tree, and the rain, you could just hear the rain pressing on the roof. It was the best white noise sleep I've ever had in my entire life in this Japanese place. And it's a completely different freaking place. And we also went to, what we did was funny. We went to sauna, to like a sauna spa. And of course, white dudes, tattoos everywhere. And we didn't go we went like on the outside, somewhere outside of Kyoto. So it was very village vibes. And like some of the old Japanese guys there, they've never seen like a white dude, let alone a crazy white dude with muscles and tattoos. And we were there with a client of mine because he's Japanese, and
cool.
We communicated over him with these old fellas, and they were laughing at us because they had these electric pools. Have you ever been in that? It's part of a spa. You go into the pool and it's electrified. There's like electric currency in there.
Oh, so really cool. I haven't
the water, and it's like shocking you. And there was some old guy, looked like 70, 80 years old. He's just sitting there for half an hour. And then you stand in there for 10 seconds and you can't bear it because it's literally electric current. And they're like all laughing. Oh, look at these stupid white guys. And it's so funny.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love those places where there's no Westerners. I remember in Osaka, me and my buddy Niels from Germany, and he's 2 meters tall, like 210. He's ridiculously tall. Like he's half a meter taller than anybody on the street. Like the guy, it's like a movie shot when you have someone on the street. It's a packed street, you cannot move, and there's one like little person standing above everybody. That was interesting. For us to walk on the street, and there's nobody, like there's no Westerners, and people would stare at you, like just you walk by, they're staring at you. We had people at night, it'd be let's say 8, 9 p.m, sun goes down, they'd just cross the street from us. Like we were like two normal dudes. Like we definitely didn't look any, like there's nothing fishy going on. I mean, just normal dudes having fun, looking at the phone. and there's been this crowd of Japanese people walking our direction. They just crossed the street because they were scared, because they never saw, like, they don't see that many Westerners at the time. That was like in 2014, 2013 even. Yeah. So that was like an interesting experience. I had the same similar experience, like of people just stopping in the street to ask you, like, what are you doing here? I had it in Taiwan, in Taipei. Like, there's just, what are you doing here? Like, who are you? Like, are you famous? Like, it's kind of interesting. We thought it was really funny. And once you get into conversations with the locals, like, you find out, like, in Japan, it's really hard to communicate because of the language barrier. We found that some people kind of knew more than others, especially English teachers and people that work in sort of industries that are related to tourism. They could communicate quite well. And it's really fun once you get through the initial barriers, right? There's just that barrier initially that is uncomfortable, but once they open up, it's such a fun culture, man. I would love to spend more time there. It's wild. Yeah. Very different thinking compared to Europe and totally. What we have in the West. Very, very different priorities and stuff.
And you can just walk around in the middle of the night, headphones in, nothing. It took us a little bit to kind of like get into the culture, but then Primoz actually met these like car guys, the underground car tuning scene, like Tokyo Drift.
Nice.
And then we started hanging out there and like communicating with those folks. And they're all like 20-year-olds that like bought like a Mitsubishi Evo, like Toyota Supras, and they tuned them. And then we just always would go to these tuning meetings, and there would be people doing like burnouts and drifting and stuff like that. And we were like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
That's really fun, man. Like, we haven't had that experience in Osaka is more like a working city. The way you kind of see it is most people looked very overworked. Like they worked 2-3 jobs to try to pay for rent. We would be running into people and we'd be meeting like these groups of individuals, and they're like, oh, let's hang out. Okay, when are we going to hang out? Oh, maybe a month from now, when we get a free day. Because they're just working all the time. There's no free time. Like, they're just work. And it's just a wild thing that they had to do back then. I don't know if maybe the situation changed now, but
So apparently we've been to Osaka as well. I didn't know. So I thought we were in Kyoto. Is Kyoto in Osaka, or
it's very close by though? Like, it's a quick train ride away, so you could do both. And the train's really nice there, so it connects.
Was that when we went to the temples? Was that Osaka?
Kyoto is the temples, I think.
We were first night in Kyoto, and the next day went to Nara, and then
Oh, you went to see the deers, and the deers are aggressive, and they don't give a damn that you're there. Like, they just try to eat your stuff. Like, I don't know if you had the same experience. Don't bring a sandwich there. They're just gonna try to eat you.
What we actually did, we were on the train station, and there was this American tourist, like a girl, and she just walks over and starts talking to us. And at first she was really nice. We're like, yeah, great, where are you from? And then she just sat down with us, like the only other white person, and we're like, kind of want to hang out with each other, and she didn't get the social cues. So we literally ran away from her. Like, we physically ran away, and then we saw her around the corner, like, no. That was so awkward. When you meet someone that is so social, they don't
get... That is a weird...
And they're like, anyways, guys, what are we doing next? And we're like, well, we are going to go over there,
She's probably very lonely there. Nobody's taking her seriously. And I'm not surprised. Like, I had a lot of locals that kind of help out. We were staying at a place that had a lot of locals, and you kind of embed into a group. You very rarely see mixed groups there. There's a couple of expats we met that were working there. Some people from France and some guy from Australia and a couple other people that were just giving English lessons and just teaching. So that kind of helped a little bit, but I don't think we would walk into places and people were just like, oh, what are you guys doing here? Like, it's just weird. Like, you're not supposed to be here.
Everybody stops talking.
It's like a weird situation. If I didn't have my buddies, if I was solo, you'd be like, okay, what is going on here? That's probably what the girl felt. Probably she walked in somewhere.
I didn't want to be mean or anything. She was just so weird. It's very awkward. And we're like, hey, we're kind of like trying to hang out here with each other. But anyways, it's a great, beautiful world to live in, man. And, it's so funny to see like how I met you so many years ago, and how there's always these touch points, and we have many common friends, and every time I have a common friend, they always talk so well of you. Nikola Tomov is a great example. He's been
Oh,
on the
really cool.
podcast
Yeah,
as
Nicola's
well,
great.
and he's like, "Oh, I was going eating sushi with Mario, the coolest guy." So,
Yeah.
you mentioned Japanese cuisine. What do you usually eat? What's your usual diet on a regular day?
It's very simple on a regular day. The Japanese cuisine would be like once or twice a week. We normally don't eat out as much. I'd say more like once or twice a week. But Teresa likes to cook at home as well, so she likes to prepare stuff. So I don't really worry too much about. We don't order in as well. Like most of our stuff is either cooked, and it's just very basic things. Like I don't spend a lot of time on cooking. I personally don't like to cook. Dinners are made exclusively by her, so we have a simple rotation where we just go through salmon, beef, chicken, turkey, pork, like just in that order, and just kind of shuffle like every single, like we do like every 1 or 2 days something different. So just basically take out different meats from the freezer and just make them and just kind of rotate like that. Similarly for the carbs, it's just a rotation between potato, sweet potato, rice, quinoa, and I think buckwheat. Yeah, it's just kind of rotation like that. So we just kind of cover all the food groups, just going through all the days. And then it's just a bunch of salads on top of that. So that's usually how dinners are designed, because salads are super dumb simple. Like here we have incredible vegetables in Spain, Portugal, any supermarket you walk in, it's just all top notch quality. Yeah. So we just buy a bunch of stuff and make these gigantic salads. But during the day, like I try to really keep things minimalist. I like to consume things like Greek yogurts and skiers and low-fat cottage cheeses and fruits and things that I can just eat on the fly that give me very high protein, dark chocolate for extra fats, and things that are no cooking. The only thing I would really cook would be eggs for lunch. That would be the only thing that I would really sit down and cook. But other than that, I would just on the fly. During the day, I don't really prepare much. And then if there is some leftovers for the dinner, which usually there are, I'll just eat that in the afternoon before I hit the gym. Maybe slam down a protein shake if I need some extra protein. So that is pretty simple. The main principle is really trying to minimize processed food. I mean, that's basically it, eating real food. So everything we eat, almost everything, like 90% is real food. It tastes great. It's just a matter of adjusting your taste buds for it. If you're used to eating a bunch of crap, I mean, obviously, like you're going to have a time to adjust to the new taste. But yeah, it's incredible. Like I love the simplicity of the diet, and it's efficient. And I don't even have to track calories or do anything. It's just pretty automated at this point.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, I don't know exactly, but my metabolism, I guess, or whatever, doesn't allow me to eat as many calories. And I remember this was the case when I worked with you. This is now the case where I work with Nikki Bra, the same as well. I'm like, my bulk is, I think, 2,400 calories. My maintenance is 2,200, and my freaking cut is like 1,900. And I'm like, I'm so jealous when I have friends who are like, what? My bulk is like 3,500. What are you talking about? So is there any way one can change that?
Yeah, I mean, can you change it really? Some people's metabolisms are much more adaptive and other people's are not as much. So if you have a rigid metabolism, like for example, what you're describing could be considered a rigid metabolism, meaning that your bulks don't go very high, your cuts don't go very low, because the problem of an adaptive metabolism, similar to what I have, is when I cut, I have to cut really deep. Like I have to go down to 1,800, 1,700 if I want to get really shredded. And it's basically starvation mode for a series of weeks until I get there. At the tail end of the cut, obviously I can start a cut at 2,200, maybe 2,000, even 2,400. Like if I want to really take it slow and nice and gentle, I could do 24, 22, 2,000, 18, 16, and just sort of like taper down and just try to survive those last few weeks, because it sucks in the gym. It sucks outside of the gym. You think about food all the time. Like if you really want to get super shredded and peeled, I don't like to get that shredded anymore. I don't think it's any benefit whatsoever. I just feel bad and no value really. 10, 12% body fat is more than enough of body fat for me to kind of feel good and look good. When I bulk though, I also kind of go, it's kind of similar process. I think my top end calories were 3,400, something like 32, 3,400. And I think as I'm getting older, I have to also keep up the step count to maintain that. If I drop my training down to, let's say 4 days a week, like I'm doing now, I'm training 4 days a week, I'm walking about 9,500, 10,000 on average. So that would be probably no more than 3,000 calories. So it's just a matter of just overall, what is the output and what's the input? I think it's reasonable. I think around 28, maintaining around 2,800 for me is very comfortable. I do not feel the need to do that. You could technically quote unquote, speed up your metabolism if you built more muscle, but that's a really hard thing to do. Obviously, as you've built already a decent and fair amount, it's hard to gain more than that. Yeah, like the only other thing would just be eating more protein, like trying to really ramp up protein, because protein has a thermic effect of about 30%. So at least you can get more volume, and those calories get burnt off through the metabolism. That is one way, but there's unfortunately no real like hack other than just being more active. Like, some people don't fidget a lot. They don't really move around a lot. They're very efficient. So your metabolism would be really efficient if you're talking, as far as conservation of energy. He is just not burning much. Whereas, I mean, that's just the way some people are built, right? You cannot do much to change some of those things. You can do more cardio, like, that's the solution, really. Just become more active, have a higher energy flux, meaning more calories are coming out, more calories are coming in. So it sort of balances itself out. Because you could technically, let's say you maintain 80 kilos at 2,300, or you can maintain 80 kilos at 2,800. The difference of that 500 is that you're eating 500 more, burning 500 more per day, right? So it's sort of like you're raising the ceiling. That can technically work, but it requires more time, and it requires a lot more work in the gym and outside of the gym, right? So it doesn't, I don't know if it's feasible, right?
Man, I'm so sad. It's a high quality problem. My body reacts very well to bulks. I can gain very quickly muscle mass, and it also reacts very good to cutting. So I'm very happy too. I really can't complain, but then at the same time, every time I talk to someone who's like, yeah, 3,500 a day, I'm like, I'm so jealous, because I love eating, and 3,500 would make me very, very happy.
That's a lot of food. I mean, if you eat healthy, that's a lot of food. 3,500 is.
I would do it easy.
Yeah, I've tried 3,500. It's a lot of food, man. It's just a lot. Like, at some point, if you really eat healthy only, you have to split it into 3 or 4 meals. Like, otherwise, you cannot eat 2 meals a day. Like, 2 meals a day would not be enough.
2 meals would be tough.
It would be really hard. 4 meals, you could definitely make it work.
It sounded earlier like you have multiple small meals. I do two. I try to have as big a meals as possible twice a day, but you said you eat throughout the day with similar smaller snacks, or
3 meals a day would be, I think, my preference. So I would eat around noon, I would eat around 4, and out around 8. That's sort of my standard schedule that I've stuck with since 2010. I mean, I've experienced different phases where I went in 1 meal a day, for example. There's a lot of hype around that. The problem with that is, if I have to eat 180 grams of protein a day, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to eat that in 1 meal. Like, it's just too much protein, and my stomach hurts, and it's a problem. And I don't want to drink a protein shake to just get that in there, because I want slow digesting protein, and I want high quality food in the diet. And I think 2 meals could be a reasonable way to approach it. So 2 meals and a protein shake in between, potentially that can work. But I'm a big fan of sort of this frequency of like 3 to 4, just because it makes sense, at least for my life. It sort of works out. And not eating 2 hours before bed and at least 2-3 hours after I wake up. I'm just not hungry when I wake up. If I don't want to spend my calories when I wake up and then don't have them later, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, same for me. Like, I even try to do 5K steps before I even have breakfast. I can delay that first meal quite a lot. And for me, it's even more extreme with the last meal. I have my last meal nowadays at 3:30 p.m. and I go to bed at 9. So I actually really like this like empty stomach feeling when I go to bed, like on the verge of being really hungry. I really enjoy that, sleep for dinner, basically. I like that. When I eat even 2 hours before I go to bed, I don't sleep as well. My body temperature is weirdly high, and I get weird dreams, which is very weird. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, like, what does your daily routine look like now? Because especially because you're a dad now, and you mentioned so many times like you want to have that time for your family. So if you could walk us through, you wake up in the morning routines, work all the way to evening routine.
It's interesting. I don't really have a specific morning routine other than wake up, drink a glass of water, and work. Like that's basically what I do. And what I work on is already predefined from the day before. So the morning routine technically is an evening to-do list that is determined the day before. So I know what I'm going to work on immediately the next day when I wake up. So that kind of keeps things in check. I really am a big fan of time blocking and Google Calendar. So my whole life is ran by Google Calendar. And if something is there, it's going to happen. If it's not in Google Calendar, it's probably not going to happen. So it's very simple and straightforward. Like when you ask me about this, like just put on Google Calendar, it's going to happen. You don't have to ask me again. It's just going to happen, right? Yeah. And just because I surrender my life to the calendar, and that's it. Like the calendar runs the show, so I'm well organized, and I don't miss things, right? So yeah, I mean, basically just waking up, getting that glass of water, starting working for about 2 to 4 hours, and then I'm going to have my first meal. So that's going to be that one like relatively large meal, probably about 40% of calories like will be in that meal. And then I'll go for a walk, and after that meal, just to digest a little bit, I'm gonna maybe catch up on some podcast, whatever, maybe some simple stuff. Call my dad, just basic stuff. Then I'm gonna come back and work for a period of time. I'm gonna have another meal sometime around whatever end up being like 4 or 5. Then I'm gonna go and hit the gym. When I come back, let's say around 7:30, 8:30 from the gym. And then I'm going to have the dinner with Patricia. And then from there on, I'm just hanging out with them. Like that's most of the time. And sometimes I'm going to turn an hour of sort of quote unquote me time where I'm not working after dinner. So then I'm going to go back and then hang out with them. And throughout the day, I also take small breaks. So I never actually work longer than an hour and a half straight for the stuff that I do. I just found that my focus dips quite a lot. So I like to keep the work block at about an hour and a half. So let's say if I'm doing a call, that's an intense call with clients or whatever, that might be like an hour and a half that is really intensive for me. So I have to sort of take a step back, and I'm just going to go play with Mia or just, do some random stuff that's going to take my mind away from the screen and the computers. I found that to be really important. Just to take small breaks during the day, because I found that the mental depletion tends to skyrocket if you continue grinding past a certain point. If you can catch it early on before you get that depletion, you're really golden. So if you can take small breaks in between blocks, like you're good. And that's basically the day. Like, the afterwards, when she goes to bed, we're going to hang out. Me and Patricia are probably going to watch some like fun stuff on our show or something. I think now we're watching this show called Justified. It's like an old like American sort of like martial show. It's kind of interesting. It has many seasons. That we usually pick shows that have many seasons, many episodes. So it's kind of becoming a ritual. And each episode is about 45 minutes. And it's a fun show to watch, has decent ratings. And I'd say it's really cool. So it's just watch an episode together, hang out, and basically call it a day. I mean, that's just more so having the time to work, health, and family, just dividing the day in a reasonable order like that. I think that makes sense. And I'll use little things like walk to the gym is getting steps and calling my parents. Walk back from the gym is maybe calling the other parent or listening to a podcast. So I'm always trying to insert little things. If I'm going shopping for some reason, I'll listen. Usually we order and just automate that. But let's say I'm going there, I'm going to listen. And then Saturdays and Sundays are a bit different. Saturdays and Sundays, there's less work. So I try to free up the whole day and we go outside, do stuff, try to spend some time outdoors in nature, stroll around in the parks and stuff like that. Because Lisbon is really cool for this. You have almost everything you want within an hour. Like you have mountains, you have beaches, you have city, you have everything within an hour, hour and a half. And it's very easy to get to. So I'm trying to be much more disciplined on the weekends, not to work and not to like put stuff on there, and just get everything that I need to get done on Monday to Friday. Like I'm really trying to do my best with that. And weekend can still be done with emergencies. Like that's fine. But there's very few emergencies in fitness like that really demand like immediate attention. Like there's sometimes it pops up, but I'm fortunate with the team and everybody like that I have. That I don't have to deal with so much of that on the weekends. So it's more like free time for me and Patricia and Mia and just kind of hanging out. And I think that's a fair setup, to be honest. Like everything in life is a trade-off. So there's, as that quote goes, I mentioned a couple of times, in life, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. And that's a fair trade-off, right? I get to work a bunch, relax to some extent, chill on the weekends and repeat this. And I'm thinking that trade-off is fair, right? That's all I'm really asking, right?
Yeah. It's so funny to see that you've kind of gotten to that conclusion of, hey, let's have the weekends off. I've had a similar process I went through, and I'm sure it was the same for you. At first, when you become an entrepreneur, you're like, oh, weekends, I don't care. That's where my competition takes time off. So I'm going to hustle through the weekends. And then also over the last 2 years, I'm like, I've just turned back to almost a 9 to 5 schedule. Sure, during the week, I probably work more than 9 to 5. But then I'm also on the weekends, I'm like, no, let's actually take the weekends off. It kind of does feel good. And I used to have this weird semi setup where I'm like, yeah, weekends I don't have to work, but if I want to, I'll do it. Now, of course, I started working every freaking Saturday and Sunday, and then it would just continuously burn me out. So just like you said yourself, I had to bring up the discipline to not work Saturday, Sunday, and to kind of force myself to whatever, go skiing and when I'm in Austria, or go swimming when I'm somewhere warm, or just go to the city.
Do you plan, by the way, the trips, or does your girlfriend do that?
My girlfriend does most of the planning.
Yeah, exactly. The same. Yeah.
Super into that. She's like, this is where we're going to go. And I'm like, I remember she was like, we'll go to Amalfi. I'm like, I don't even know what country that is, but fine with me, you know?
Exactly.
And then I'm there and I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. Look at the cliffs. And she's like, yeah, I told you, you know, but of course I don't pay as much attention. I just trust her that it's a great place.
Same, man. Yeah, same. I just get the itinerary and I just follow along, and I have a good experience. I just don't know what to do. I suck at planning stuff like that, but I'll when you drag me out of the house, I'm going to have a really good time. But to actually like, if you leave it up to chance for me to do something, if it's not pre-planned on the calendar, it's going to default back to something like very mundane. It's going to be like a walk around the park that's near, like 5 minutes away from the house.
That's exactly the same.
I'm not going to come up with something on the spot that's worthy of doing it for like 3-4 hours. But if she does it, then she plans, takes a look at TripAdvisor reviews, where to go, what's nearby, and then we can actually have a good time together. And so, I like that. I think it does help a lot. I don't know if you ever had a personal assistant that does that type of stuff for you. Like I never really went that direction. Okay,
I still do. I've had it to the T. Like, tell me when the cab is downstairs. Literally, like, I want to go to the thing at this time, and then the cab driver is now here. I'm like, okay, like literally like that. I've done the extreme version of that. Now it's a little bit less, but I've definitely went down that route.
Nice.
One thing I wanted to ask you, what made you sure that Patricia, the mother of your daughter, is the right partner?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, man. I have to think about that. You can't know when you first meet someone. I think that's something that it's really difficult to understand. And it's also something that you can try to do a direct conversation about core values, but one thing is what people say, the other thing is what people do, and their habits and where their families as well. So a lot of it came from just behavioral observation, because we sort of learn a lot about other people around us if you just observe them enough. If you're just looking at your phone all the time, you're not paying any attention. But if you're actually attentive and seeing what's going on, you can see who has the qualities that you would want in a partner to raise a family with, which would be having that caring, having that empathy, having things that are actually not my strong points, because I'm more of the logical, fix problems, solutions, don't talk to me until it's done type of person. And I don't really even take time often, which is something I'm trying to work on, to acknowledge the person's feelings. I'm moving on to the solution immediately. I don't care about how let's just fix it. If we fix it, you're going to feel good, right? And that's kind of how I'm thinking. There's a problem, we need to find a solution. Patricia is very different. So she's kind of more, okay, let's assess the situation. Let's acknowledge people's feelings. Let's see what's going on. And she's much better at handling those types of like human to human interactions than I am in most of these instances. And then, I met her family, and there's a lot that you can actually learn from just meeting someone's family. I think that's a very underrated way of getting to know someone. Just hang out with their mom and their dad. Like, you learn more about the person like that, where the environment is that the person grew up in, which actually formed the person who they are. Like, you can pick up a lot on. I think it comes down to really sharing core values. Like, I wouldn't have been in a serious relationship with someone who didn't actually have qualities of being very feminine, being very caring, being very like looking out for me in their own little unique way. Obviously, like, I know I can handle everything by myself, but it's nice to have someone there to, okay, they got my back. They're going to be helping as much as they can, their capacity. So it's just really analyzing like, what is that person's perspective on the world? Where do they see themselves in the future? And I think we align a lot on those things. Like, you can never align 100% perfectly with everybody on things, but as long as you can align on the things that are really, really the most important things, I think that's more than enough, because most of it is just building anyways. So you have to build it together. Like, you're not going to have it. It's not like you're just going to meet someone tomorrow and, okay, this is perfect. Let's roll. Let's have 8 kids. Like, it's not going to happen like that. So you have to build it. The question is, are you hanging out with a person that has a growth mindset that can actually endure the building, that can endure the trouble? And honestly, like, I didn't know much about Patricia until we had some issues. Like, for example, when you get robbed in Mexico and how she handled that, or when we had to deal with stuff that's bad. Like, you don't know someone when everything is going good. Like, you can only know someone when stuff just breaks, and when there's frustration, when you're like, rent is expiring, you have no other place, you have to go somewhere, and you're in the streets, you have to travel suddenly, and there's some stuff that comes up, you lose a job, or stuff like you get into financial drama or some parents issues and stuff like that. That's when you can actually get to know someone. I mean, those are the most important moments to get to know someone. So if you are only on the upside, it's very hard to get to know who your friends are and who your people around you are, someone you can rely on. So I think that's a combination of all those things, to be honest. That would be the answer. It's very hard to pinpoint the exact moment, but it's just the evolution of that over time. There's just no, as long as the fundamental principles are there and you're avoiding really big mistakes and screw ups, you're fine. Like, that's my philosophy with most things, because the fundamental principles are there. Like, do you love each other? Do we align ourselves where we're going to live, stay? Do we both want to have kids or not? Like, that fundamental stuff is there. And then we're just avoiding really big mistakes. And that's it. Like, that's more or less enough to have a thriving relationship that puts you among like the top, 1 to 5%.
Yeah, man, beautifully said. And when it comes to fatherhood, you strike me as a person that prepares very well for a lot of challenges, and fatherhood are, inarguably being one of them. Did you somehow prepare? Did you read books? Did you get a course or anything on that? That's
why I'm laughing here, because I was like, I bought like a bunch of courses, books, watched a bunch of videos, and I don't know. It's a lot of that is just to make you feel like you're doing something, because at the end of the day, you don't really have to. I mean, some preparation is all right, and it's necessary to know some of the basic things. Obviously, you have another human being around you, but you're more ready than you think. Like, most people are way more ready than you think. You've solved much, much more complicated problems than being a parent. Like, there's 8 billion humans. Like, you can figure out how to have one. Like, it's not that complicated to have one, right? It's just, we put so much pressure on ourselves. Like, again, the human is very basic in its like initial stages. Like, what does my daughter need, right? My daughter needs shelter, needs food, and needs sleep, and just like normal environment. So nothing crazy. That's all she really needs. If she's well fed, if she's well slept, if she's clean, so if she's not like pooed, that she's fine. Like, there's nothing like that's going on. Obviously, like, you can have all kinds of complications and whatnot, but in my opinion, it's more of like, once you commit that you want to be a parent, then it's like, you're just going to figure it out anyway. Like, I think the first barrier of like, do you want to be a parent or not? If you can make that decision, okay, I want to be a parent, then you may as well just ignore the fear. Like, it makes no sense. You're going to have to deal with it anyway. So for me, it was already a decision. I'm going to do this regardless of how it feels. So whatever, I'll just figure out how it goes. And there's been certain things, there's a little rash pops out somewhere. Oh my God, it's like a panic. You Google it, call the doctor, it's not a big deal. Just relax for a little bit, change your clothes. Don't use it's basic stuff. But yes, I've read a ton. Okay, which plastics do we need to remove out of the house? Like, which food containers should we use? Like, what's the most optimal bottle for the baby to heat up that is glass and we're not using plastic? What types of clothes does you wear? So it's like non-colored cotton. So it's like perfectly natural and skin compatible, not using polyester. Like, there's like all these little things, like optimizing the environment, the heat, the temperature, the cold, the light. Yes, there's a lot that goes into it, but like, you don't have to do 90% of that is just my own like nerdiness.
Yeah.
And 10% is maybe useful. Like the bottom line is like you are there, you take care of the child, you give it enough time and space and food and shelter, and you're fine. Like everything is going to be okay. I think that people are trying to over prepare for something you can never really prepare for, because every child is different from what I'm hearing about a lot of people. And we've met so many parents here, and their kids are very different compared to me. So we don't really, I honestly don't think you can prepare, because every person is unique. Like you get a unique human, and how do you know how they're going to behave? It's a very, very challenging. Yeah. We met probably like 6-7 different parents with their kids now, about similar age. They're all kind of different. Like you just don't know, and they all have different routines and all different schedules, and when they go to bed, so I don't think you can honestly prepare. It's just you have self-confidence at the end of the day. Like you have confidence, okay, I'm going to do this, like, and I might be able to do it. Okay, that's it. That's what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Lovely. I'll, once I got my first daughter or my first son, I'll for sure send some questions over your side. Look, one thing that I ask everyone that I know that is both a business owner and a father or mother, let's say 18, 25 years from now, your daughter comes to you and she says, Dad, I want to build a business. What do you tell her?
Well, the first thing would be a question, like what type of business do you want to build, right? The answer, if I want to be a YouTuber, the question is, why do you want to be a YouTuber, right? Because I mean, if someone asked me at 18, if I asked someone, I wouldn't really know what I want. It would be very hard to know. I'm hoping that through observing my own behavior that she would be able to understand like what businesses really are. They're just problem solving systems that you put together to solve a specific need that's out there in the market, and you get fairly compensated for solving that need. So the question is, okay, what problem do you want to solve, right? And I think that's the most, because we can solve all kinds of problems. I mean, I could tomorrow open another business that solves a specific problem that is totally unrelated to fitness, and you just know the principles. Like there's an issue, you just really have to find a fit that can solve it in a financially profitable way that can keep running the system, reinvesting it and growing it and building it into something amazing. So once you know how business quote unquote works, I think that's sort of where the conversation would go. But yeah, it would be like, okay, what type of business do you want to build? Like, why do you want to build it? Just really asking that. I'm not a really strong believer in college. I think college is incredible for social elements and just meeting people. But I think people should be taking control over their own finances much earlier in life. So my hope is that with my daughter, I can also teach her the values of earning through hard work, like much earlier in life than I have. My parents didn't really put me to work as much. I worked a little bit during my teen years. I think that might be something that it's important for kids to learn. If you do this, you get this compensation, and then you have some freedom with that budget. You can do stuff that you want. I think that's an important lesson, because my parents are not entrepreneurs. I understand that that's not within their, like, they did their absolute best, and that's who I am today. I mean, I built something that most people don't have, which is incredible. So they did a really good job. And but still, like, their philosophy was go to college, right? Get a job, work hard, try to save, which obviously we know it doesn't work that well in most countries. Like in some countries, in some professions, in some situations, it might be enough, but it's not really in your control. So that is leaving it up to the universe to decide whether you're going to have financial freedom or not, which I'm not a really big fan of. Like, as maybe sounds like a bit of a control freak. Maybe you're the same, but I don't like to leave things like that up to chance. Like financial success, leave that up to chance. That's one of the most important things in life, whether you have freedom or not. Similarly, do you leave relationships to chance? Like, okay, how are you going to randomly run into the perfect person? Of course not. Like, it's never going to happen. Like, I mean, it might happen in some rare instances, but it's very unlikely. It's like, do you wake up one day with a six-pack randomly? And you're like 40 kilos overweight? Of course not. And so it's a similar thing here. It's like, I would try to early on instill some skills. Okay, there's a problem you just solved. You have a lemonade stand. People are thirsty and it's hot outside. That's why they're buying your lemonade, and that's why they're paying you more than what you're using to make the lemonade. Here's what that's a business, right? So it would be that conversation. But yes, I would love if my daughter was an entrepreneur. I think that would be something that would be a dream come true for me. Now, obviously, I don't want to impose my own will. Like, I'm not, I don't want to be that parent, but I hope through just being a role model and showing what's possible that she might decide to do that. If not, I just hope that she can find her own way to add value to the society. I think that's the most important thing. The only thing I wouldn't want is someone who is sort of lazy and leeching value from the world. Like, I think that would be like a big failure that I would consider, like, as a parent. But as long as someone is contributing value in any profession, like, it doesn't matter what the profession is, if they're adding value to the world is a better place for them being here. I think that's fair. And I think that's more than enough, right? I think finances are, important, but obviously, that's a trade-off, because being an entrepreneur is a trade-off. Like, you have to work your ass off for half a decade to a decade. And the question is, like, do you want to spend your life like that, right? And I did, and I want to, and I would have done it again if I needed to, but that's not for everybody. Like, maybe some people would like to chill back, let's have it more like a normal, stable, steady, with less risks and less ups and downs. More predictable life. And that's fair. I think that's all. Like, I'm much more, when I initially got sort of to a point where I was like, okay, I don't have to worry anymore, I was a lot more like, everybody should be an entrepreneur. Like, that was my mindset. Like, everybody should ditch all their jobs, everything. But I'm not really in that mindset anymore. Like, if someone really has a great situation, that's awesome for them. But I just think for most people in most situations in most countries, if you're struggling with the sort of the job element of it, try to really get out of the system entirely and observe it like a little bit. Okay, what can I do that's outside of the box? Because if you're playing, the thing is, like, if you're playing the wrong game, even if you win, you're still a loser at the end, right? Like, if you're in the wrong game. So it's just being understanding, what game are you playing and who's setting the rules of the game? That's the problem. Like, what rules, do the rules allow you to be successful in the games that you're playing? Like, if you're playing Diablo with me, and to be successful in Diablo, you need to grind for 10 years and there's a chance you're never going to get there, would we play that game? Like, what the hell, man? Like, the reason why you're playing it is because rules kind of make sense, that there's a glimpse, okay, this can actually work. Because if you remove that, so I think most people can see your current situation, find people around you that are in a similar situation, observe them. They might be 5 years older than you, that have been at that job for 5-10 years. Are they still like there, right? Like, are they still there? Are they happy? Or do they have perspective that they're enjoyable? I think that's a fair way to sort of start getting a glimpse of the future. But yeah, for me, it's I love that element of control. Like, even if I didn't have my own business, if I was working with someone else, like, I would still love to be running my own daily schedule. Like, I would still love to have my own sort of like little business within a business. I think that makes sense. Like, that's sort of like what I'm a big believer in that. Like, that's just you like run your own little show inside of a company. I think that's also really fair. As long as it kind of aligns with the overall vision, I think that all makes sense to me, rather than, dreading waking up every day. I think that just sucks. That's not worth it.
100%. And this is, I wanted to ask you this question because I often think about this too. I'm like, knowing how hard building a business is, knowing how much I've been forced to grow, like, you grow or you die. Do I want my daughter or my son to go through that? But then also the highs that I've gotten from it, not just the lows, but like the things I experienced and the great things I got to reach for myself, for my clients, for people in my company. Will I want to deny that? But it all comes back for me to one important question that, of course, I myself at my stage don't know, is how much would you support your daughter at building a business? Would you be full on involved in it? Would you let her fail, knowing that this is a lesson that she could maybe avoid? Have you thought about that?
That's a slippery slope. Yeah. So definitely I would try not to, I would try to offer the most minimal amount of support that's absolutely required. And in general, I think that would be a fair principle, because if I went, so let's say I take someone from the street who doesn't have business skills, who hasn't gone through what I have gone through, and I hand them over, here's my YouTube channel, here's my email list, here's all my clients, here's Stripe logins, here's everything, and just take care of it, they would bankrupt the whole business in a month. Like, just because they don't have the skills, the tenacity, and the process that they haven't gone through to get to a point where they can even earn and to maintain that business, right? Similarly, if I take someone at 40% body fat, turn them into 10% body fat using my magic wand, which I don't have, how long would it take them to get back to 40%? Like 3-4 months, 6 months, right? So it's by not allowing someone to fail or learn and really experience what it looks like, you're not going to train them enough to even sustain a business. So even if you give it to them, they're going to fail at it and they're going to just lose it. So it's not necessarily about the result. Is that person capable? Look, you're going to have a business when you deserve to have one. That's basically it. Like when you deserve to have one, when you're skilled enough to have one and to manage one, you're going to have one. That's as fair as it is. I think entrepreneurship is very fair, like in the way it's set up. Like the universe is very fair with entrepreneurs. Like you either work, contribute, survive, and beat, or you lose and give up and you're done. So it's very fair in a way like that. So there's no way to cheat the system. So if you try to cheat the system, if I throw $500,000 at her, hey, some startup money, let's go, it's useless. Like it's not going to really do much. Like if she doesn't know how to do marketing and how to build a business or sell something or create a product or whatever, I think it's same with kids as well. Like if you don't teach them the basic principles of growth mindset, it's very, very difficult for them to get out of just entitlement and just thinking that the world owes them something. Yeah. The world owes you shit and it's not going to give you anything. If anything, it's going to try to take away stuff from you. So you have to essentially be able to endure that. So if you don't build that resilience early on, it's going to be very hard for you to be an entrepreneur. Like I think most entrepreneurs fail simply because they don't have that resilience there. Like they're just going to give up instead of trying to problem solve. I think one of the benefits that I had was because I came from a software engineering background. So for me, it's like iterations. It's all iterations. Like I don't care. Like it's version 1 of my business doesn't work. Version 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. I'm just going to keep iterating until I get to the version that works. Like I don't care. It's already like a project that's working. And I'm just going to keep iterating. And I think that mindset is the only one that can work versus like, oh, it works or it doesn't. That you're out of the game instantly. Like any all or nothing or black and white thinking will eliminate you quickly because you don't have the consistency or anything. It's like with videos, like you made hundreds of videos. I look at my first videos. It's a joke. Like it's an absolute joke. Like it's fun to look back at them. I love to look back at them. But the video that I make today versus the video that I made 10 years ago has gone through thousands and thousands and thousands of iterations. Yeah. So the video now deserves to have 100,000 views. Yeah. If someone gave me the channel that I have today 10 years ago and said, Mario, just make videos, the channel would fail. Yeah. That Mario, that version of me doesn't have the necessary skill and the way to express himself and create quality that a 500 or 400K channel deserves. It's simple as that, right?
And that channel that you have now is fucking crushing. I remember I looked you up and like, does Mario still have a channel? I'm like, oh my God. And the crazy thing is, I got to say this too, because, I work a lot with YouTube over the last couple of months. It's just talking head stuff. It's not crazy lifestyle driving around. It's just Mario talking head, and you have insanely good engagement, insanely good view numbers. And I'm like, and I click on a video and I just get sucked in. It's just you talking. And I'm like, the scripting, simple. The hooks is so on point. And I could literally tell, like you said, this is version, 19.1, whatever. You've done it so much that it looks so seamless, but looking at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, seeing what you're doing, I'm like, it's really good. It's really, really freaking good.
It's very hard to make things simple and make them work. Like it's very, very hard. I tried the travel blog life. The thing is, you got to ask yourself, what daily life do I want to be living? Meaning that if I wanted to make a lifestyle vlogging channel, I would need to live a certain daily life that I don't want to live. Yeah. So even if someone gave me a vlogging channel with 5 million subscribers and said, okay, roll, I don't want to live that life. So it's not going to work for me. This works great for me. I have my setup. You can sit here. This is the exact same setup I use for YouTube. I made a specific room in the house that's optimized for this. Nothing here moves. Like it's all in the same exact place all the time. Yeah. And I just roll and I work hard on my scripts. I work hard on my content to try to present ideas based on client experience and research and whatnot. And I deliver. And obviously some people like it, some don't. There's much bigger channels than mine. In fitness, people grow really quickly. But the audience that I do get, which I'm really proud of, is people that think in similar ways. So they have similar core principles. And because I'm a coach, I can actually work with those people, because if I wasn't a coach, I mean, it wouldn't really matter. If you're just selling products, like if you're an info marketer, you can just sell to anybody. But as a coach, if I'm going to spend my life and this is going to be me and my team and everybody's like working hard with these people, I want these people to be cool individuals we want to hang out with anyway. And that's kind of what the channel does. It's like the first filter. It doesn't have these millions per video views. Like, it's not a Mr. Beast type of channel, but it does appeal to a certain audience that are versions of, like, you know, people that we like to work with, which is incredible. We get these incredible, you know, people reaching out from that. We got guys working at NASA, like Google, Apple, like all kinds of cool stuff. We're hanging out with them and we're just asking them stuff that's incredible. Like people putting rovers on Mars, like it's insane, man. And I don't, you know, I'm kind of surprised sometimes, like, oh, you watch my videos? Like, okay. And that's cool. I mean, I love that. But yeah, I think people can recognize effort, and once you read like hundreds and hundreds of books and stuff, like your mind just comes up with, because when you have a multidisciplinary approach to life and you get all the disciplines and you learn a lot from each one, your mind can come up with ideas that are cross domain. So you kind of get ideas from the finance world and from some business world, and then you have fitness and you combine them. That is very unique, and that's sort of the unique value someone can add versus trying to regurgitate and copy. I'm sure you get people copying your stuff all the time. And that's just the way. I mean, you can never really get ahead of the original by copying the original. I mean, it just doesn't work, right? Like there's no version where that can work, actually.
Here's so, you know, it's exactly like you said. It's like you create content. And this is something that we teach all the time, and even on the beginner level, is you create content that attracts the kind of person that you really want to work for, that you want to work with together, and that you want to hang out with. Do you remember our 10,000 calorie Milka challenge video? Remember that?
And that's a great example of a video that I would not make no chance anymore. And that's me not being experienced enough at content creation, right? Who would watch a 10,000? I mean, it's a fun video to watch, but is that going to be, you know, making any sense from a perspective of like a device or how to or anything? But it's fun as hell, man. Like, we had a fun time.
It was not even fun. That's the thing. It wasn't even fun shooting. At first we had fun. And we were like, oh, I've been fasting for so long. Can't wait to eat the Milka. And then, remember, I was like lying on the floor in pain because it was literally the worst stomach pain I've ever had.
How do these people do it? I'm wondering to this day, how do these people actually do it?
I ate like half a bar and I was done. And we had like 6 of the big bars. Like, yeah, I'm going to eat. Oh, it's not going to be enough, Mario.
I just don't know. Like, I just don't know how people do it. Like, I haven't tried after that challenge. I think that was a good enough experience to not ever try it again. But how do these people eat 10,000 calories? You have to have, you have some form of like, you know, genetics.
Sort of, genetic I also wonder that, especially because it's one thing.
Exactly.
Like, if I could mix it up, but if you still randomly have that video on a G Drive folder, honestly, send it over. I just want to watch it. I
have to look at it if I have some raw footage somewhere. It'll be just as a part of, it's just for fun, man. Like, I think we have some B-roll there of rolling on the floor and just being in stomach pain.
Was it on your channel or mine? I can't even remember.
I think it was on mine, but I think you might have had a version of it or something on yours, like a chopped up shorter version potentially. But regardless, I'll try to dig it out sometimes. I think I might have it on one of the old Google Drives somewhere. Because I didn't lose any footage. I think I stored almost all the footage in a cloud just to make sure it's there and preserved. But that's wild. And an idea like that is just something that we, now I mean, it doesn't make sense from a business perspective, but back then everybody was doing the challenges, and I was thinking, oh, this is gonna get so many views, and I think it tanked. Like, it didn't get any.
Totally tanked. Nobody cared.
Like, it didn't. Nobody cares that we just suffered. Like, nothing, zero. Like, nobody gives a damn. It's such a disappointment.
When you do things from the desire of making it blow up, or it's I want to make a popular, it's not going to work.
It's just,
and it's also, it's like, I almost feel like you're putting in the wrong type of energy, because the energy is directed towards, I wanted to get clicks and I'm copying something that works. Like you said, like everybody does the challenges. I want to do it too.
Yeah, it was out of character as well.
Exactly.
Like, who are these guys? Like, why do they make?
Exactly.
Like, why does Mario do this? Like, makes no sense. Yeah.
Whereas if you focus on something that fits to you, your values, your teachings, your core values, then all of a sudden it starts working. And then you're breaking it, almost like it breaks the rules. Sam Selig is a good example. Is like all the YouTubers are like, well, you got to use jump cuts and you got to retain the freaking MrBeast style. You got to get the retention. And then there's just some random dude who just has like almost no cuts, 27-minute video selfie stuff, or even your stuff. Like I said, it's like just talking head. It breaks the rule of what everybody thinks what makes it work, but you make it work because it's you.
Yeah.
And it's congruent and it fits to what you do all day. I mean, this podcast is a great example. You're sitting here and you're freaking talking. There's no jump cuts. There's no animations.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, it's easy. But it's for me,
amazing. It's like, I'm like, people are going to listen to this podcast. They're like, this Mario Tomic guy is amazing. Right. And although you break the YouTube rules of the, the engagement and all that. And that's what's important is like, I always say like the world has 8 billion monopolies if people only had the balls to be themselves instead of just copying what they think is going to work.
Yeah, there's a lot of algorithm chasing. There's a MrBeastification of YouTube happening over the last 3-4 years. A lot of the fitness guys have turned into sort of like a fitness version of MrBeast. There's a lot of people trying to copy that style. Again, it's really about what life do you want to live and who you are. Like I just can't sustain that. It just doesn't make sense. So even if my channel stayed small forever, like at least it's doing actually quite well compared to like, what people have. But it's something I know I can sustain, and I'm going to play the game for like 80 years. So we'll just see if it works. Like, and that's the thing, like most people that I know that started channels around the same time as I have already gave up. They haven't uploaded for like 5 years. Yeah. And so I'll beat most on longevity. Like, I don't care how long it takes. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't care if it takes 40 years to build a channel to 1 million subscribers or it takes 4. So what's the rush? Like, I mean, I'm already good. It's like people trying to, let's say, live a better lifestyle, lose weight, right? There's no competition who's going to live a healthier lifestyle faster. Yeah. Like you just run it and you just do it. And it's the same with YouTube. Like, I don't care how long it takes. For me, I'm going to be making videos whether I have 0 extra subscribers now or whether I have an extra 40 million subscribers over the next 50 years. So I'm just going to keep making videos. And once you do that, well, then you don't worry about the metrics, because it's very easy to get caught up in the metrics, as I have been as well. So for me, it's just making content at this point because I know what works to some extent. Obviously, if I was a complete beginner, you have to figure that out in the beginning. Like, you have to shell out a ton of content. I did a year of daily videos. Like, I tried a whole bunch of stuff to get good at this. And that's something you have to initially. Like, there's just no shortcut around that. Like, nothing. Like, you just have to grind out at some point if you're... Unless you naturally have a really, really good way of expressing ideas and you're super smart with that type of stuff, with content presentation, maybe you have a film background and just all this stuff combined and you're just a great TV personality, that can work. I mean, there's people like that just pop off in a year. Like, I've seen guys go from 0 to 100K and to 1 million as well within a year, no problem, within 3 months. For the average person, I would like to kind of think of myself as representing that average, even though I'm not average at the moment with what all the sort of assets that I've built up and stuff. But for the average person starting, I think what I've gone through is closer to the expectation that you can have, just how long it takes. Like, I don't think you can expect it to be like a lot faster than that. Similar with building muscle and getting a physique. Like, people don't want to, they don't want to hear that it takes 5 years to build an amazing physique, right? Like, they want it tomorrow, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? If you're the average Joe, and likely it is, that's how averages work. You are like, that's if you weren't average, you probably wouldn't even be listening to this, because if someone is jacked naturally, as I know a couple of friends that when we came back home after traveling for 3-4 years and training 3-4 years, these guys were not lifting weights at all. They just go to the gym and lift more than me. Like, they're just benching 110, 120 kg. And I was like, okay, And that's just when you meet a person like that. And I mean, I don't take my gains for granted. I know I work really hard for them, but they do, for example. Like, they don't care about it. Like, they just show up at the gym once every 3 months, every 4 or 5, 6 months. But like, this step of stuff with the channel, it is brutal because the competition has also increased so much since I started in today's, right? So starting today is also harder, and that's a good thing because it forces you to be better. Yeah. And everything, like the way the system is designed is that if you're not good enough, you just don't get views. And that's awesome because you have to get good enough. Like, and it teaches you skills much quicker than they used to. Like, you could just turn on a webcam and record and get 100K views. Now you can't do that anymore. Now you have to actually learn how to set up a camera, how to create a script. You have to prepare, and it's cool and it's awesome. It teaches you so much. Like, and you can quickly see if you like it or not, because eventually you would have had to do that anyway. So you can quickly see if this is for you or not. I'm a big believer in YouTube. Honestly, like, if there's one platform that, like, you know, my dad watches YouTube all the time. Like, everybody's on YouTube now. Like, everybody's on YouTube. True. I love what YouTube is doing. Honestly, like, it's my favorite platform. It's the platform that I spend the most time on. I really study it a lot. I have my, you know, all the things that I podcast, like almost everything is coming from YouTube, actually. It's kind of interesting. Like, I barely spend any time on any other platform. Like, people Instagram, for example, I barely open Instagram. I think I've felt like 30 minutes Instagram time over the last 4 or 5 months. Like, I don't pay any attention there, but I pay attention to YouTube. Yeah, I just like it. I don't know. It fits what I'm sort of looking for.
YouTube is still the beast to tame as a creator. And like you said, like, a great indicator of how well a platform is doing is your mom and dad on it. Right. Yeah. And that's very, very true. It's like the moment you crack into that demographic of like 60 plus, because that's the last demographic that takes something up. The moment you crack that, you're good to go. Yeah. And that's why YouTube's so powerful. That's also why I started doing the podcast. I'm like, I love doing long form videos, and I always wanted to have an excuse to talk to great people such as you. And I appreciate it, man. It's been really freaking awesome knowing you for so long, and always checking in every couple of months, every couple of years, and seeing that that you're crushing and that you're doing well. And dude, you look happy, you look fucking healthy, you're smarter than ever. You've always been extremely smart, but you've progressed there super much, and I'm super happy to know you, man. And it's been a very wild journey. And honestly, man, I hope maybe in summer I'll make it down to Lisbon, maybe even with my girlfriend, and we would love to have some sushi with you or whatnot, and some Japanese food. Sure. One last question I want to ask you is, like, imagine you get one day of billboard time on the Times Square, and you could choose anything you want to write on that billboard, and everybody's going to see it for a full day. What would it be?
Oh, damn. We're assuming people pay attention to those things now. You could have just told me, hey, why don't you have a Facebook ad that will show up on all their phones? Or whatever the platform, TikTok maybe, or something they're using. But yeah, honestly, I don't know what I would put on that billboard. I would probably just... because I don't need anything. Like as funny as that is, I just don't need anything. Like, so it wouldn't be anything that I personally would need. That's interesting. Maybe some form of charity or something I just put on there, because honestly, I just don't need anything. Like, I'm good. Like, if someone asks, like, what do you want? Like, it's really hard to buy me presents. It's hard to buy me stuff. I just don't, like, all I want is more time. Like, that's all I want. And that's one thing I can't have. So I just don't know. Honestly, like, I don't know what I would just, I'd research something very simple and straightforward, and maybe put a quote of some people, something that people don't worry about things there, that things will get better or whatever, to give them some hope. But it would most likely be some form of, like, because I'm a utilitarian, so I have to kind of think about what would give some utility, and it would probably be some form of charity that would actually make a difference somewhere, maybe restoring the Amazon forest. I just watched a Joe Rogan episode with one of the guys that was there. Forgot his name, but it was an incredible episode. He talks about the ecosystem of the Amazon forest and how these, like, bugs live in the trees, and the trees an ecosystem, and it just all kind of dies and grows again the next day. And it's like these like bacteria. Like, it's incredible. Like, I think that type of, I'd just like put some form of like charity. Let's give it, because from a personal self-interest thing, like, I'm already fine. Like, I mean, I have enough of what I need and I'm good. But yeah, it would be something like this. Honestly, it's kind of hard to, put exactly what.
Well, That's one hell of an answer, dude. And I think it's been one hell of an episode. People who want to work with you, people who are like, who's this Mario Torres guy? Is amazing. Where can I find you? Where can I check you out?
YouTube. Just check out some of the videos. It's very simple and straightforward. If you like some of the content, you can watch more of them. The algorithm will show me if you like it or not, if you keep coming back. So the algorithm will control your life. And yeah, hope you enjoy the content and hope you enjoy this podcast. So yeah.
Amen to that. We're going to put all the links down in the description. And yeah, thank you very much for listening and or watching. And Mario, dude, it's been a fucking pleasure. I think I took a lot of time from your family time away.
No worries,
so,
man.
you know, let's I'll of course let you know when the podcast episode drops. I'll send you all the links and shit like that. And wishing you a great birthday celebration in 8 days. And we'll stay in touch on WhatsApp. And like I said, if I make it down to Lisbon, definitely let's grab some Japanese stuff.
Thanks so much, bro. Yeah, I would love to, if you get a chance to come down here. We're also going to be moving a little bit this summer. So if you get a chance to spend some time in wherever I'm at, if you can see me somewhere, just feel free to reach out. Always a pleasure to hang out.
Fuck yeah. We'll do that, man. All the best to you and the family, man. Much love. And you're a fucking legend, dude. Let's stay in touch.
Thanks so much, man. All right. Will do.
Have a good one, man. Cheers.
All right.